Sehr geehrte Damen und Herren, liebe Stifter, Stifterinnen, Freunde der Rohde-Stiftung und liebe Stipendiaten. Ich freue mich, Sie heute zum ersten virtuellen Rohde-Stiftungsevent begrüßen zu dürfen. Mein Name ist Magdalena Pöllmann, ich bin bei Rohde Schwarz tätig im Bereich University Marketing und Recruiting und darf Sie heute Abend durch den Abend begleiten. Ich freue mich ganz besonders, weil das Thema Talentakquise, Akquise junger Studenten, Förderung junger Studenten mir persönlich am Herzen liegt und ich freue mich, Sie heute hier in unserem Videostudio bei Rohde Schwarz begrüßen zu dürfen. Was erwartet Sie heute Abend? Ich werde das Wort direkt an Herrn Khadjavi übergeben, der Sie nochmal auch begrüßen wird, unseren Personalleiter Holger Schötz anmoderieren, der Ihnen Themen auch zur Talent Acquisition bei Rohde Schwarz erläutern wird. Und ich freue mich ganz besonders, 2 Stipendiaten, Alumni bei uns begrüßen zu dürfen, Herrn Irman Abdic und Herrn Sebastian Schuon, die aus ihrem Gründungsleben berichten werden. Ich denke, wir werden hier alle spannende Einblicke bekommen und vielleicht auch das ein oder andere lernen. An dieser Stelle wünsche ich Ihnen viel Spaß, einen angenehmen Abend und übergebe das Wort an Sie, Herr Khadjavi.
Vielen, vielen Dank, Frau Pöllmann. Ich fange vielleicht gleich mal an, mich zu bedanken, sozusagen bei dem ganzen Organisationsteam rund um Frau Pöllmann, sozusagen von der Firma her, bei dem Herrn Huber aus dem Videostudio und bei meiner lieben Assistentin Simone Kunz. Die haben das alle ganz toll vorbereitet und entschuldige mich gleichzeitig, dass wir uns nicht persönlich treffen können. Leider waren die Pandemieregelungen noch so undurchschaubar kompliziert, dass wir dann gesagt haben, machen wir es lieber so, kann sich jeder entspannt das Ganze anhören und nächstes Mal dann wieder als echtes Networking-Event persönlich, so dass man sich eben unterhalten kann, sich wiedersehen kann. Das ist ja mit sozusagen der Hauptgrund in der Vergangenheit gewesen. Wir haben inzwischen seit Gründung 2006 über 300 Stipendien vergeben und diese 300 Stipendien bzw. Stipendiaten, die waren auf der ganzen Welt unterwegs, auf über 70 verschiedenen Universitäten, exzellenten Universitäten. Und es ist natürlich dann ganz toll, wenn die sich wiedersehen und man sie wieder sieht und drüber spricht und sagt, hey, wie war es denn? Was macht ihr inzwischen? Und da kommen ganz tolle Geschichten bei raus. Und um das auch hier jetzt klar zu machen, haben wir 2 Stipendiaten mitgebracht. Sozusagen der erste Stipendiat, glaube ich, den wir je hatten, den Sebastian Schuon und dann ein paar Jahre später den Irman Abdic, der sozusagen auch beide ganz spannende Geschichten zu erzählen haben. Und insofern können wir dann auch gleich damit loslegen. Ich möchte davor nur noch ein paar Worte sagen, die immer wieder erscheinen. Also Fragen, die immer wieder erscheinen, sind zum Beispiel, warum machen wir das? Warum gibt es die Stiftung? Was ist die Motivation? Und da möchte ich noch mal ein bisschen ausholen. Und zwar meine Großmutter, die leider schon verstorben ist, 2011 verstorben ist, die hat eben 2006 die Stiftung ins Leben gerufen mit der Motivation der Gesellschaft, etwas zurückzugeben. Und hat sich gedacht, na, wie mache ich das dann am besten? Und da gab es dann den Professor Eberspecher, Elektrotechnik, TU München, der da von der ersten Stunde an dabei war, heute auch im Stiftungsrat ist. Und die haben dann zusammen ein Konzept entwickelt und haben gesagt, naja, wir konzentrieren uns auf die Studierenden, die ins Ausland wollen. Ja, weil es gibt viele Studierende, die haben gute Noten, aber vielleicht sozusagen jetzt gerade noch nicht die Möglichkeiten oder es wäre schwierig für sie, im Ausland studieren zu können. Und so haben wir da so eine gewisse Nische entdeckt und haben dann sukzessive da Stipendien vergeben. Das war in der Vergangenheit so 25 im Jahr. Wir haben jetzt gesagt, wir erhöhen auf 30 im Jahr, also das ist eine 20-prozentige Erhöhung, die wir durchgesetzt haben und das teilt sich inzwischen auf 3 Bereiche. Das ist einmal klassisch historisch die Elektrotechnik beim Professor Eberspecher, dann ist es die Informationstechnik beim Professor Pretschner und dann als drittes neu der Professor Holleitner im Bereich Quantenengineering, Quantenphysik in Garching und so teilt sich das Budget auf und an der Stelle möchte ich mich auch ganz herzlich bei den genannten Professoren bedanken. Ohne die Unterstützung im Auswahlprozess hätten wir sozusagen niemals die Qualität sowohl von der menschlichen Seite als auch von der akademischen Seite, die wir haben und so ein tolles Alumni-Netzwerk und so eine wunderbare Gemeinschaft. Insofern ganz herzlichen Dank auch an die Professoren an der Stelle. Jetzt möchte ich aber gar nicht sozusagen Ihnen zu sehr die spannenden Vorträge, die noch kommen, vorenthalten, sondern direkt das Wort übergeben. Erstmal an unseren Personalchef von unserem Familienunternehmen Rohde Schwarz. Hier sind wir auch gerade im Videostudio. Das können Sie jetzt nicht sehen, aber das ist alles wunderbar professionell. Viele Lichter, viele Kameras, sogar geschminkt wurde man. Also jetzt holen wir den Holger Schötz bitte auf die Bühne, Personalchef Rohde Schwarz, und er wird etwas über die Situation auf dem Talentenmarkt erzählen. Vielen Dank. Viel Spaß.
Vielen Dank, Herr Khadjavi. Vielen Dank für die einleitenden Worte. Auch vielen Dank schon mal für die Einladung. Sie haben mich ja gebeten, ein paar Worte zur Talentsituation zu sprechen oder zu erläutern. Und ich habe heute mit dem Titel etwas gerungen. Und so haben wir es dann genannt, die Jagd nach Talenten. Und ich habe etwas gezögert erst mit dem Titel, weil natürlich der Begriff der Jagd vielleicht auch anders interpretiert werden könnte. Aber nachdem ich weiß, dass der Herr Khadjavi eine hohe Leidenschaft für eben dieselbige hat, dachte ich mir, heute könnte der Begriff durchaus passen. Und es ist so, letztendlich, ich bin selber kein Jäger, aber ich bin gern draußen in der Natur. Und wenn man momentan gerade in der Frühlingszeit rausgeht, ist ja das Schöne zu sehen, wie sich die Dinge draußen entwickeln, in der Natur entwickeln, selbst entwickeln, aber auch mit Unterstützung der Menschen, die Wälder sich entwickeln, die Tiere sich entwickeln. Und es ist so, wenn man diese Energie, die man dann draußen spürt, auch überträgt ins Unternehmen und einen Blick einem Unternehmen schweifen lässt. Also ich bin jetzt 15 Jahre bei Rohde Schwarz und es ist unglaublich schön zu sehen und es ist sehr, sehr motivierend zu sehen, wie Personen in Herausforderungen wachsen dürfen und können, die den Raum bekommen, die neue Verantwortung übernehmen. Und ich selber über die Zeit, seitdem ich bei Rohde Schwarz bin, durfte viele verschiedene Aufgaben übernehmen und auch ich durfte in diese Rollen hineinwachsen. Und das macht unglaublich viel Spaß und da komme ich auch zum Thema Herausforderungen. Ich glaube, Herausforderungen muss man immer sportlich nehmen. Die Situation am Talentmarkt ist auch für Rohde Schwarz eine Herausforderung, aber ich bin froh, hier zu sein, denn wir haben eine gute Basis. Wir haben über Jahre und Jahrzehnte in diesem Unternehmen eine Unternehmenskultur geschaffen und kontinuierlich weiterentwickelt, die uns jetzt hilft und kontinuierlich geholfen hat, die Strategie darauf aufzubauen und auch unsere Aktionen darauf aufzubauen. Und da werde ich das ein oder andere während des Vortrags noch erwähnen. Wenn ich auf den Begriff der Herausforderungen blicke, und was ist eigentlich gerade im Nahbereich 2022, was sind die Herausforderungen, die ich sehe ich eigentlich so 3 Dimensionen. Das Wichtigste ist hier auch auf der Folie auch zentral genannt, der Begriff Talent Retention, die Mitarbeiterbindung. Das ist eigentlich das zentrale Thema für viele Unternehmen, so auch für Rohde Schwarz. Wir leben von einer hohen Betriebszugehörigkeit. Wir wollen das auch weiter beibehalten. Und wenn man Studien liest, gerade während der Pandemie, sehr viele Menschen überlegen, also laut Studien 38% bis 40%, je nach Studie liest man, dass Menschen überlegen, ihren aktuellen Arbeitsplatz zu verlassen, was Neues zu versuchen. Und das sind Themen, die wir natürlich ernst nehmen und wahrnehmen. Und so wie ich es eingangs schon genannt habe, uns war es aber immer wichtig, Talente weiterzuentwickeln, aber umso mehr müssen wir jetzt den Fokus darauf richten, dass wir die Talente im Unternehmen eben weiterentwickeln können, weil das im Endeffekt die Motivation hochhält. Und auch zu der Zahl, die ich gerade genannt habe, die Menschen geben das zwar an in Studien, wir merken aber noch nicht, dass diese Wechselwilligkeit wirklich da ist. Und da werde ich beim Überblick auch nochmal 2, 3 Worte dazu sagen. Das zweite Thema ist das Thema Talent Retention. Talent Acquisition, das Thema Attraktivität für neue Talente, Talente ins Unternehmen zu bringen. Es gelingt uns noch relativ gut, unsere offenen Stellen zu befüllen, auch in einer angemessenen Zeit. Wir haben zwar eine leichtere Steigerung als im Jahresvergleich von in den letzten 2 Jahren jeweils erlebt, dass die Time-to-Fill-Zeit, also die Zeit von Ausschreibung bis zur Einstellung sich etwas erhöht hat, aber das ist noch im Rahmen. Es ist aber so, dass wir tatsächlich viel mehr Aufwand reinstecken müssen über die letzten Jahre, was das Thema Arbeitgebermarke betrifft, Arbeitgeberattraktivität, Active Sourcing, aktiv den Markt zu bearbeiten. Da ist unglaublich viel Aufwand inzwischen gefordert und auch das Team von der Frau Pöllmann speziell auch gefordert, viel mit Hochschulen zu arbeiten. Das tun wir gerne, aber wie gesagt, das ist auch für Unternehmen ein hoher Aufwand, den wir da tätigen müssen, um auf dem Markt auch wahrgenommen zu werden und wettbewerbsfähig zu sein, wenn es um die besten Talente geht. Das dritte Thema möchte ich auch noch ansprechen, nicht unbedingt alles im Talentkorridor zu betrachten, aber letztendlich auch die Situation, die wir jetzt haben, wie wir alle es erleben, die Corona-Pandemie hat sich jetzt etwas verändert, Gott sei Dank inzwischen in eine Dynamik zu mehr Freiheit. Nichtsdestotrotz, wir haben in dieser Situation vieles wahrgenommen, vieles gelernt, wir haben vieles gesehen, was funktioniert und nicht funktioniert. Und letztendlich die Herausforderung für unser Unternehmen oder für uns im Unternehmen ist es, diese auch gewonnene Flexibilität der Mitarbeiter und Mitarbeiterinnen, die jetzt im Endeffekt auch während der Pandemie durchaus als angenehm empfunden wurde, wenn man auch die Studien betrachtet und Umfragen betrachtet. 9 von 10 Arbeitnehmern wünschen sich das auch für die Zukunft. Wir sehen ja auch, wer es gelesen hat, auch prominente Beispiele wie diese Woche von Apple, der verantwortlich für Artificial Intelligence, der aufgrund der fehlenden Homeoffice-Möglichkeiten so ein prominentes Unternehmen verlässt. Aber im Endeffekt ist es so, wir haben da eine gewisse Gratwanderung zwischen der Flexibilität der Mitarbeiterinnen und der Bedarfe des Unternehmens. Wir geben da wahnsinnig viel Vertrauen. Wir haben Vertrauen in unsere Mitarbeiterinnen. Aber ich sage es immer, auch in meiner Mannschaft, die Flexibilität des Einzelnen endet irgendwo da oder hat die Leitplanke da, wo Ergebnisse gefährdet sind, wo im Endeffekt die Zielerreichung gefährdet ist, wo die Kultur gefährdet ist, wo der Teamzusammenhalt gefährdet ist und wo letztendlich die Flexibilität und Freiheit eines anderen Kollegen eingeschränkt ist. Und da muss man Kompromisse finden und das wird uns weiterhin beschäftigen. Ein paar Worte noch zur allgemeinen Einschätzung des Marktes. In Summe, wir sehen eine angespannte Situation, die Wechselmotivation ist gering, auch die Mobilität hat abgenommen, also die Bereitschaft wirklich den Wohnort zu wechseln für eine andere Arbeitsstelle, das nehmen wir in den Gesprächen wahr. Speziell in der Metropolregion München, der Wettbewerb ist gestiegen, auch um ähnliche Profile, gerade in den Bereichen, in denen wir unterwegs sind, Elektro- und Informationstechnik. In Summe, der Bewerbungseingang ist schon rückläufig, das merken wir auch im Jahresvergleich. Das ist ein Markttrend, betrifft Rohde Schwarz genauso. Wenn es jetzt im Markt stabiler wäre und nur bei Rohde Schwarz, dann wäre es anders zu betrachten. Aber in Summe ist es so, dass die Bewerbungen zurückgehen. Und das ist erstaunlich mit der Zahl, die ich vorher genannt habe. Viele Menschen geben an, bereit zu sein, aber tatsächlich wirklich wechselaktiv sind wenige. Und wir erklären uns das so durchaus mit der instabilen Marktsituation, dass Menschen jetzt trotzdem noch zu mehr Sicherheit tendieren. Und wir werden beobachten, wie sich das nach vorne hin entwickelt. Zum Thema Bewerbungseingang auch bei der Ausbildung, das merken wir durchaus, dass wir gerade in diesem Jahr abnehmende Bewerbungen haben, Bewerbungszahlen, aber vor allem die Qualität der Bewerbungen nimmt schrittweise ab. Also wir sehen, dass wir Stellen nicht mehr so gut besetzen können, auch nicht mehr alle Ausbildungsstellen dann besetzen können, ohne Qualitätskompromisse einzugehen. Und ich komme später noch drauf zum Anspruch der Ausbildung bei Rohde Schwarz. Aber wie gesagt, da merken wir Veränderungen. Was für mich bedenklich ist, und da werde ich dann noch tiefer einsteigen, ist, dass die Elektro- und Informationstechnik rückläufige Studierendenzahlen verzeichnet. Das ist für uns absolut bedenklich und auch für mich persönlich ein Thema, das mich immer wieder alarmiert, weil das im Endeffekt so der Mittel- und Langfristindikator ist, wie wir in Zukunft Talente finden können. Und das gibt mir schon einen Grund zur Sorge und da möchte ich auch noch drauf eingehen. In Summe, der Bedarf und die Angebotssituation geht auseinander und da ist jetzt die nächste Folie. Das Chart ist jetzt visuell, ich hoffe, dass es gut lesbar ist in der Übertragung. Wir sehen letztendlich, dass in den Schwerpunktstudiengängen, von denen wir einstellen, die Zahlen über die letzten 3 Jahre rückläufig sind, und alarmierend rückläufig sind. Man kann mit der Demografie auch diese Zahlen nicht ganz erklären. Das heißt im Endeffekt, dass die Elektro- und Informationstechnik auch überproportional rückläufig ist, was letztendlich bedenklich ist. Wir sehen hier in München beispielsweise noch eine positive Ausnahme, das ist die TU München, die im Endeffekt denen es gelingt, weiterhin die Studierendenzahlen zu steigern, allerdings sehr stark über auch ausländische Studierende, was schön ist, wenn jemand zu uns kommt, um seine Ausbildung zu machen. Wir hoffen natürlich auch, dass an unseren Kernstandorten dann die Talente auch bleiben, aber in Summe eine Entwicklung, die bedenklich ist. Und jetzt komme ich noch zu einem anderen Chart und kennt wahrscheinlich der ein oder andere bereits, auch der Bedarf, die Bedarfssituation. Wir waren am Montagabend bei der TU München eingeladen zu einer Veranstaltung, da hat der Professor Hofmann das auch, der Präsident der Hochschule, zitiert. 100.000 Elektroingenieure im Zeitraum von 10 Jahren, die uns fehlen in der Wirtschaft, in der deutschen Wirtschaft. Und das ist eine bedenkliche Zahl. Und da muss ich schon dazu sagen, wir müssen da aufwachen. Und nicht nur Rohde und Schwarz, sondern, glaube ich, alle miteinander müssen wir da aufwachen, denn das ist ein gesamtheitliches Thema und ein ganzheitliches Thema. Und wenn wir haben jetzt eine aktuelle Studie auch gesehen vom VDE, die veröffentlicht wurde, die Attraktivität von Elektroinformationstechnik. Für mich persönlich, ich meine, bin beim Unternehmen, wo ich sehr griffig sehe, was man mit diesen Technologien alles Tolles bewegen kann. Nur die Schüler können damit relativ wenig anfangen und da kommt auch wenig an. In der eben genannten Studie ist es so, wenn man 50 Schüler, Schüler und Schülerinnen am Gymnasium als Stichprobe befragt oder die wurden befragt, die interessiert sind an Mathe, Physik und Informatik und auch gut sind in diesen Fächern. Also eigentlich Kernzielgruppe für Elektrotechnik, von denen man hoffen muss, dass die an einer Hochschule diese Studiengänge wählen. Von den 50 Befragten sagen, nachdem sie die Fragen durchgegangen sind, da sagen 2, ich habe Interesse daran, Elektrotechnik zu studieren. Und das ist in dieser Zielgruppe eine alarmierend schwache Zahl. Und wir erklären uns das schon damit, weil im Endeffekt die Griffigkeit dieser Berufsbilder in den Schulen zu wenig gegeben ist. Und gleichzeitig ist es aber so, wenn man andere Gruppen in dieser Altersklasse befragt, das ist in derselben Studie veröffentlicht, wenn die Frage kommt nach künstlicher Intelligenz, wenn die Frage kommt nach Klimawandel, seid ihr da interessiert, dann interessieren sich 75% der Schülerinnen und Schüler für diese Themen. Nur der Konnex, wie wichtig es ist, Elektroingenieure und Informationstechnik auszubilden, um diese Probleme zu lösen, um diese Herausforderungen zu lösen, neue Technologien zu schaffen, diesen Konnex, das gelingt momentan uns allen miteinander zu wenig, das zu transportieren. Und das ist ein Thema, wir als Unternehmen wollen da natürlich Verantwortung übernehmen, das tun wir auch, aber alleine werden es die Unternehmen nicht schaffen. Ich denke, das ist oder möchte es also positionieren, das ist eine gemeinsame Herausforderung für Politik, für auch die Wirtschaft gemeinsam. Und was wir versuchen zu tun, ist in den Dialog zu treten, auch mit der Politik. Wir hatten hier vor kurzem mal Besuch vom Herrn Siebler, der ja inzwischen leider nicht mehr Wissenschaftsminister ist in Bayern. Da gab es ja einen Wechsel. Ich hoffe aber, dass der Wechsel oder dass der Herr Siebler nicht mehr im Amt ist, nichts damit zu tun hat, dass er bei mir das Gespräch gehabt hat. Aber letztendlich, wir haben darüber diskutiert und wir waren uns da schon sehr einig. Im Endeffekt ist es zwischen den verschiedenen Ministerien übergreifend zu betrachten. Und wir denken schon, dass wir dann einen Schulterschluss brauchen zwischen Wirtschaft und Politik, weil es geht los in der frühkindlichen Bildung, geht über die Primarstufe bis hin zur Sekundarstufe und darin liegt eigentlich der Kern der Herausforderung. Ich persönlich habe bezüglich der Hochschulen weniger Sorgen, sondern eher am Zulauf zu den Hochschulen und ich glaube, da gibt es auch Ansatzpunkte und wir verfolgen das auch, dass wir in Schulen reingehen, wir machen Praxisseminare an den Schulen, versuchen uns in MINT-Programmen, da beteiligen wir uns, machen Wettbewerbe, aber das ist ein extrem hoher Aufwand, den wir da betreiben und wir werden nicht ganz den Bildungsauftrag auch der Politik übernehmen können und wollen wir auch nicht. Letztendlich geht es darum, Nachwuchs Menschen fit fürs Leben zu machen, Lust auf Technik zu wecken, denn das sind wirklich tolle, hochbezahlte Berufe, die wir hier haben und wir brauchen diese Technologen für die Zukunft, für die Herausforderungen der Zukunft. Noch ein paar Worte, was wir alles machen. Das wäre jetzt ein Portfolio, da könnt ihr jetzt lange und breit bei jedem Thema erzählen. Die Frau Pöllmann mindestens genauso lange. Wir machen zahlreiche Maßnahmen mit wirklich vom Praktikum begonnen über verschiedene Preise, die wir verleihen, Wettbewerbe, Tech Talks, als Flagship-Maßnahme unsere Engineering Competition, in die jedes Jahr, da gibt es ca. 400, die sich erstmal bewerben und dann tatsächlich ca. 120, die in verschiedenen Teams dann mitmachen und dann eine tatsächliche technische Aufgabe lösen. Das ist ein ganz toller Wettbewerb. Und wie gesagt, da steckt mir viel Aufwand rein. Wir tun das gerne. Letztendlich ist es aber so, das ist nicht nur was für Rohde Schwarz, sondern auch gesellschaftlich, dass wir diese Technologien an den Universitäten und Schulen nahebringen. Und auch in Richtung Bindung machen wir relativ viel. Wir versuchen eben die Bindung zu Studenten, wenn man sich kennt. Wir haben relativ viele Werkstudenten hier im Haus, also so rollierend ca. 300, dass wir die wirklich kontinuierlich diese Beziehungen auch pflegen. Ich komme immer von der Parallele, wenn ich an mein Studium zurückdenke, damals war immer so die Diskussion, wir kommen vom Verkäufermarkt zum Käufermarkt. Jetzt ist es so, wir kommen immer mehr und sind angekommen von einem Arbeitgebermarkt zum Arbeitnehmermarkt. Und da ist das Thema Custom Relationship Management und in dem Fall Talent Relationship Management ein ganz wichtiger Aspekt. Und das versuchen wir auch zu tun. Gesellschaftlich denn wir bilden zwar für Rohde Schwarz aus, aber nicht alle bleiben bei uns. Viele machen ja auch dann weiter und gehen auch in andere Unternehmen. Wie gesagt, Gott sei Dank bleiben viele oder kommen auch viele wieder zurück. Wir haben über die Jahre jetzt über 3000 Azubis ausgebildet und duale Studenten ausgebildet. Wir haben in den letzten 10 Jahren 6-mal einen bundesbesten Azubi gehabt. Auf das sind wir sehr stolz. Und wir legen auch einen Wert darauf, dass wir wirklich sehr gute Prüfungsergebnisse abliefern, denn es ist so, wir wollen ja die Top-Technologen ausbilden, die uns später technologische Probleme lösen können. Denn ein Kollege aus der Entwicklung sagt zu mir immer, 2 halbe Spezialisten lösen mir kein Problem, sondern ich brauche die Top-Talente, ich brauche die Top-Spezialisten, denn ein Spezialist kann dann vielleicht ein Problem lösen, was nicht heißt, dass wir nicht im Team zusammenarbeiten, sondern letztendlich ist es so, wir wollen ein hohes Niveau haben. Aber wie gesagt, wir haben auch momentan ca. 300 Azubis an unseren Kernstandorten in Bayern, in Teisnheim, Memmingen und in München. Und dann komme ich schon zum Ausblick oder zu meiner letzten Folie. Wir investieren viel, wir müssen auch viel investieren, um im Endeffekt weiter als Arbeitgeber als attraktiv gesehen zu werden und nicht nur von außen gesehen zu werden. Wir wollen auch innen dieser attraktive Arbeitgeber sein und versuchen, dem auch weiter nachzukommen. Denn nur so wird es uns gelingen, auch auf Dauer gute und die besten Talente für uns zu gewinnen. Wir wollen damit oder wir wollen in verschiedenen Themen auch unseren gesellschaftlichen Beitrag leisten. Das tun wir auch, indem wir in die Schulen reingehen und da sehr aktiv sind. Eben das Thema attraktiver Arbeitgeber habe ich gerade schon strapaziert. Und den Aufwand, das möchte ich nur noch mal reingeben. Ich weiß jetzt nicht, wer alle zuhört und alle zugeschaltet ist. Das möchte ich auch Ihnen nur mitgeben. Es würde mich freuen, wenn es den einen oder anderen Impuls auch für Sie gegeben hat und wenn es vielleicht ein Thema gibt, wo Sie sagen, das könnten wir uns gemeinsam vornehmen. Denn ich glaube, der Aufwand für Unternehmen und für Unternehmer steigt kontinuierlich, diesen Talentmarkt weiterzuentwickeln. Und ich glaube, das ist eine gemeinsame Aufgabe. Und die wird kein Unternehmen alleine lösen können. Und in dem Sinn, vielen Dank, Herr Khadjavi, zum einen für diese Einladung zur Veranstaltung, zum zweiten aber vor allem auch Dank an die Rohde-Stiftung für das gesellschaftliche Engagement, denn auch die Rohde-Stiftung leistet damit einen Beitrag, dafür die Talente von morgen zu entwickeln und denen zu helfen, dass sie gut starten können. Und wir haben ja heute auch noch 2 tolle Vorträge. Ich freue mich, dann auch die ehemaligen Stipendiaten zu hören, was die alles geleistet haben und erreicht haben. Das wird sicher spannend. In dem Sinn, vielen Dank und ich wünsche Ihnen viel Spaß beim Zuschauen. Vielen Dank für die Aufmerksamkeit und ja, viel Spaß und weiterhin einen schönen Abend. Magdalena, darf ich wieder zurück übergeben?
Sehr gerne. Vielen Dank, Holger. Ich kann mich allem, was du gesagt hast, nur anschließen. Wichtiges Thema für Rohde und Schwarz. Wichtig, glaube ich, für die Gesellschaft als solches. An dieser Stelle darf ich unseren ersten Stipendiaten anmoderieren, Herrn Irman Abdic, der, wie angekündigt, was zu seinen Gründungserfahrungen berichten wird. Sie haben auf Ihrem Stream unten die Möglichkeit, Fragen in den Chat zu tippen. Scheuen Sie sich nicht, die Fragen zu stellen. Wir werden am Ende etwas Zeit in Anspruch nehmen, etwas Zeit haben, um die Fragen zu beantworten. Wir sammeln hier alles und nehmen Sie gerne teil. Ich rufe Sie an dieser Stelle auf, die Fragen gerne zu stellen. Eine einmalige Gelegenheit. Herzlich willkommen auf der Bühne and the stage is yours.
Perfect. Thank you. So, first of all, I'd like to thank Rohde Schwarz and Rohde-Stiftung for having me here. And also for all those that are watching us online, I'd like to say I'll try to take care that we have an interesting presentation, and I hope you enjoy it. So, my name is Irman Abdic, and I was a scholarship recipient in 2014, about 2015. And I'd like to try to portray today how was our journey at Bleenco, our company. And to kick it off, I'll start with a quick introduction about myself. So my background is, I was born in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and then my parents moved to Slovenia for work. And then there was this war, 91 to 95. And somehow we got established life in Slovenia, and I grew up there. And after growing up, I decided to move for my studies to Germany and the US. First, I went to TUM and CDTM, and then I went to MIT. And finally, I also did some exchanges here and there. I was in Israel, in Tel Aviv University, but also in China and Tsinghua University. And I think this gave me a little bit of, I'd say, a broader view and a more understanding for different cultures. What you see on this picture, that's me showing to my favorite book, which was Nikola Tesla's History of Inventions. So I was showing to one of my buddies about AC and explaining him, how things work. And you can see that I was really passionate about it. And I'm sure I was passionate about artificial intelligence as well. It's just they just didn't have any children books back then about these things. So what you see here is a quick demo of an invention, or I'd say a nice home project we did with my colleague at university. So we won some award, and it was a printing machine. You put a T-shirt and it just prints something out. So let's talk about Bleenco. Bleenco is a company that has been founded in 2017. We had headquarters in Munich, but we have our team in the US. We have in Romania, in Slovenia, in Switzerland, and we work on artificial intelligence. So you can see our picture at one of the team events. Our journey started in area of Munich, which is not very popular. That's Blumenau. And if you would look at the radius of 3 kilometers, there's no other startup there. But that's how we started. It was a basement-like apartment, and we kicked off a company there. The next office where we moved was a little bit bigger, I'd say 2 rooms, and that was a university, but it was again in basement. So we still didn't deserve to get to the first floor. And the first real office that we had was an office which we had with another startup. And we shared some common spaces. We had 3 rooms. And the guy you see here sitting on the floor, that's young Bernhard. It's our CDO now. And I think he was learning Japanese here or writing something in Japanese. So we had a lot of fun. We've been visiting recruitment events. Every year we visit MIT, so we have very good ties there. And we visit some lectures. We tell Bleenco's story. We try to inspire young people to join us. And that's where we recruit our members. We've been traveling and working. We've been attending exhibitions, fairs. We've been delivering successful projects and more successful projects. And also we've been winning awards. This award was with BASF and Bleenco, our company. That was 2 years back. So the main question is, why did we start a company that does something in artificial intelligence in the first place? But also the question is, why now? Why does that even matter? Is that just passion, or is there some more to it? What you see here is a histogram. And this histogram is showing you how many publications each year, which were peer-reviewed, was published in AI topic. And you can see that this is really accelerating. You can see that there's a peak, and it's going up. And this was 2019, and it continues to grow. So one of the things that's very interesting is, if we would have a time machine, and if we could go to 2010, and then if we would say, now we would like to learn everything that happened last 10 years in AI, you would have to read a little bit less than 200,000 scientific papers. But if you would do the same today and say, let's learn last 10 years, it would be over 800,000 research papers. So that's last 10 years. So you can see where I'm going with this. But to illustrate that properly, here you can see a good depiction. So each block you see here represents a certain field in AI. And then it might be that there's two fields where you think you really know something. So I'd say these are the two fields where you really think you know well. These are the two green blocks. And if you zoom in, you can see not even these two fields you can know everything. I mean, there are things you simply don't know. There are new things, new breakthroughs you haven't read about. But let's say you know these two fields. In reality, what happens? If you want to build an AI solution, you need to know all these fields. So they're sparse, they're distributed, and there's no way to know everything. So you can see a first gap, which is clear. The knowledge and access to knowledge, it's really difficult because there's a lot of it. And it's hard to distinguish noise from signal in this case. So that was the first real motivation. Why did we kick off the company besides the passion? The other thing we saw was distribution of talent. So if you look at the map here, you're going to see that the talent is almost everywhere. Can be in every corner of the world. And I'm sure you know that with COVID and latest happenings, this even got more global. So if you worked in the US for a US company and you were originally from Sweden, it's very likely that people moved back home and worked remote. So these talent got completely distributed, and it's really hard to consolidate it at one place and say, this one place has all the talent it needs to succeed. So that's another part of the problem, that the talent is really sparse, and there's a lot of things going on. So there are two options, and let me tell you upfront that we don't believe that there's going to be a few companies that have all the talent and knowledge, plus that they keep inventing new things. We don't believe that. What we believe is more likely, we believe that there will be platforms that funnel AI inventions. So a platform just like ours that knows how to take an invention and bring it quickly from academia into your product. And that's why we built our product called Bleenco Go. So Bleenco Go encapsulates this fraction of knowledge of AI and enables you to reuse it, to combine it, and stitch together with all kinds of different pieces to solve some of the hardest problems you have. With our software, you can build all kinds of different solutions with ready-made components. You can just connect and enable your product and bring it to the next level. And this is how it looks like. You would first look for a component. You would drag and drop the component to the canvas. Once the component is on the canvas, you can connect it with the rest of components. You can do that simply by clicking and dragging things around. And if something's wrong, we'll show you a small red triangle in the corner that tells you should inspect something because it simply doesn't work. In this case, we forgot to load something called machine learning model. So we go back and replace this component and fix it. So the emphasis is really on ease of use so that non-expert can build AI solutions. And if you're interested to see your solution in real, so how it works, you can do that just with a click, and you can inspect in the browser the output. So in this case here, we have two subjects that are wearing safety equipment, and we are checking for masks and helmets, safety goggles, for all kinds of PPE. The other thing which is very interesting is if you're prototyping, it's very likely that you have a multitude of sensors. So you likely have more cameras which you would like to test. And what we did, we make it really easy to first set up these cameras and connect them to the system, and then to switch just by drag and drop and change the input. So that makes it really easy to prototype. And it doesn't have to be just camera. It can be just anything. It can be microphones, can be signals, electrical signals, can be weather, can be connection to the car. It works with all kinds of different inputs. So that's enough about the product. So I'd like to show you and talk a little bit more about a team, because some of the lessons learned that we have are heavily, they depend really on our team, and the product they built is amazing. So I'd like to talk a little bit more there. An interesting fact is that our team snagged over 50 Olympic medals in computer science, physics, math, and so on. And maybe I'd like to point out just a few people that contributed to this product. I randomly depicted few to give you a baseline so you can understand what are the profiles. For instance, Hugh's our chief researcher. Hugh's background, math, he finished at Cambridge, then he was at MIT with his PhD. He was 9 years at Google, and after that, he decided to join us. He started programming when he was 4. Can you imagine that? And Richard, he's from Estonia. His background is at MIT, and just look at this guy. He won 13 international Olympic medals. So just imagine that. And an interesting thing about Bernhard, who is our chief technologist. Bernhard joined us very early, so was #1 employee in Munich. And the interesting thing about him is that he self-taught algebra at age of 6. That was something really fascinating about him. And another thing that I learned later, he doesn't brag, so I'll brag for him. I read a book about Soyuz program, which was a space program in Russia developed after the Second World War. And I'm sure you know that after the Second World War, they took half of the scientists to the US, half of them they took to Russia to work on space programs. So his grandpa was actually leading this program in Russia, and heavily contributed to the Soyuz program and its success. So that was mind-blowing, because then it all made sense. Definitely a lot of genius DNA. So to summarize, I'd like to go through 4 lessons that we learned during the process of building the company. And there's a lot of questions I always hear. Is it about money? Is it about fancy office? Is it a really well-written job ad? What is it? So these are all good questions. And I'll jump right in with the first answer. So I think, from what we've seen, that it's really about cultivating authenticity and individualism. And I know that this can sound as a cliche, but the hard part is the second part of the sentence, because then you need to learn to appreciate this in various occasions. So, like this guy who's walking in the winter in shorts. To give you an idea, you can be in the middle of a meeting and someone has an urge to tell you that a certain part of the software works, and you're with clients and they can storm in and communicate that, and you should say thank you, thanks for interrupting, thanks for telling me this is great news, and you should give them high five. So that's what I'm trying to depict. So it's not just about saying, yes, we appreciate authenticity and individualism, but then you're not practicing it. So you have to be able to then appreciate that and appreciate the difference. The other thing and the other learning is that you want to create an open-minded culture and culture that cares about each other. So what you have to definitely do, you have to put a lot of feedbacks in the loop. So what we do after every major release of the product, after every major effort, we have one-on-one feedbacks where people can communicate with each other. They can share opinions. If there were some misunderstandings, they can clarify that. So it's more or less engineered process. We don't just let people work together, but then not having opportunity to communicate with each other. The third learning is about a controversial topic. Not a lot of company talks about it, but it's really important, and that's health at work, well-being, especially mental well-being. And what you see here, these are the numbers from an official study from the US. Over 4,000 Mensa members were interviewed. Mensa is an organization where you can be a member if you have an IQ over average. So they try to look into how healthy is this population of Mensa members. So what they found out is that in terms of mood and anxiety disorders, Mensa members had about 2 to 3.7 times more the national average possibility to have these disorders. Also, they found out that environmental allergies were 3 to 4.2 times more, but also they found out autoimmune disease is about twice as national average. And if you just consider that, you can see that it's really important to set up a safety net for your employees. And then you need to make sure that you actually never need it. So you have to do a lot of events, you have to talk with people, you have to make sure that they can tell you if there's something wrong and that there's no punishment or different outcomes that they would not appreciate. And the last but not least is it's about really statement. And I think having a bold statement is really important. Having a strong vision, a good product, a way to funnel your ideas to depict them. But again, the second part is more problematic. You have to then keep the promise. So you can say, we're the best, we have the best technology, the hardest problems to solve. But then if you don't keep the promise, people will leave very fast. So I think what you see here on this slide is a typical job ad that Bleenco would publish. You can see that there's nothing fancy in it. It's very short, very crisp, and it carries one main message. And this message is, maybe there are geniuses who care about a bit of money, a bit of topic they have to work on, a bit of colleagues and environment, place of work, and so on. But I've never met one smart individual that didn't care about getting and fulfilling their full potential. It's 0%. I always met smart people who want to fulfill full potential and achieve maximum to get most out of them and apply that in real life. So if there's someone who'd like to apply, here's our careers email. And finally, if you would like to learn more, I'd like to invite you to just type into YouTube Bleenco product launch Zugspitze. Last year, end of year, we had a product launch on top of the mountain, the highest peak in Germany, and it was epic. So I'd like to invite you to check this out, to learn more about Bleenco, and say hi and send us an email if you'd like to know more. Thanks.
Thank you, Irman. I think you can stay on stage, yes, as we will have the Q&A session following.
Okay.
And I will just go through them. One of our viewers is Jörg Eversbecher. Welcome, Professor Eversbecher. I will read through his question. Thanks for the nice talk. AI techniques are to a certain extent working like a black box. If a customer uses your tools and products, how can she or he understand why and how the solution works?
Perfect. Thank you for the question. Well, the whole promise of our product is that you can build AI solutions with building blocks which you can connect into solutions. So by default, we promise that they're going to be way more transparent than any other solution you have on the market, which is just a black box and you have no idea what components are inside. And on top, what we provide, we inspect and provide detailed description of each component and building block you use to solve problems. So in a sense, we break the complexity of a complex solution in small pieces, so you understand the complete architecture of the solution. And then we also take each of these components and explain them separately.
Okay, thank you for your answer. I hope this helps to understand. And actually, here I have a question for Rohde Schwarz, but please stay on stage. The question is it important to speak German at Rohde Schwarz? In general, we are a German family-owned company, but however, we have many international colleagues and many international teams, and I think it's not a mandatory requirement, and we are opening more and more, and so we are very happy to welcome even English-speaking or beyond that colleagues. Yeah. So, are there any further questions from the audience regarding Irman's presentation? There is one more. How much of current AI research is noise and how much is signal?
It's a very good question. So what we see is that there's a lot of research, first of all. And I already mentioned that it's hard to distinguish noise from signal, which means that it's a billion-dollar question. And I think, in a sense, that to answer that, you need to have a way to funnel all these different researchers and benchmark them on the fly, so that you can tell the difference and that you can understand what are pros and cons of each other. But probably there's very little unique research. So I'd say probably less than 10% of all publications. And then out of these 10%, maybe another 20% of that are really breakthroughs. So that would be my rough estimation, maybe.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
So if there are no further questions from the audience so far, I have one question for you.
Okay.
How did you handle all the team building, bringing your hires into your team during this last 2 years of the pandemic situation? Because you said it's very important to look at the individuals, to build a culture, to get a sense of belonging. How did you handle that at Bleenco?
Well, actually, it was quite easy because I think the hardest part of building a strong tech team is get a base. So to get a nucleus, which you can then use to grow your team further. The way it works at Bleenco, we get a lot of referrals. People who work already at Bleenco, they participated in competitions, they know all the smart people, so they refer them. They apply, we get them in. That's how it works. So at this stage, it still works via recommendation. So a lot of people comes in like that. Those that don't come in through recommendations is typically through visits of universities. We are maintaining very close ties with some of really leading universities in the world. One of them is Technical University in Munich. MIT is another one. We have Cambridge. We have some other universities that are really good. And we somehow are lucky to get always slots there so we can present the company and audience can hear us, and then we can get more candidates in.
So in this point, we seem to be competitors?
No, we're partners.
Yeah. So if there are no more questions from the audience, I will have a look around in the room here as well. I would say thank you very much, Irman, for your time and your presentation. And we will do a technical change here, and I will welcome Sebastian Schuon here on stage.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome, Schuon.
Hello.
Sebastian Schuon, sorry. I think now we will switch back to German.
We can do this in English. I am flexible. Let's do it in English. There's more people that, I guess.
Okay, so we
you
continue.
can ask the question in German and English.
Okay, we continue in English. Stage is yours. Enjoy.
Thank you for having me. Good, I don't know, evening. Hopefully you all have a beer by now or a drink and enjoy today's event. I'm very honored to be here to share my story. My goal is to be an inspiration to you, that you can see, well, this guy was there at some point and this is where it might end. So why shouldn't it go for me like that? And I also like to take the occasion to give a shout out to Professor Ebersbach, as you apparently seem to be there. You are the reason I'm standing here today. You referred me back then to the Rohde-Stiftung with an ingenious email. Thank you from that position. Thank you very much. So let's see that. So I'd like to talk to you about today my journey, how to build companies as an engineer. And I really like to break it down into 3 parts. One is, what was my journey? Second, how I think about building companies. And the third one, how is it special to do it as an engineer? Let's do time warp. You can guess who I am here. I'm that guy to the left. For me it all started that I went to the CDTM and met other like-minded people that had drive and people that had been from a different discipline. And that was also where I met these 3 other people. Those were my co-founders. And I think that's a good way to meet people. It's actually going out and enjoying yourself. And through the help of the Rohde-Stiftung, I was able to attend university in the US, here namely Stanford. I did my master's here. My background is in electrical engineering. I switched to computer science, so also that's possible. It's a little bit harder, but it's possible. And I think it opens up perspective to change the field of study and to look a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right. And so how did we bring up, for me it was not clear that I'd be an entrepreneur at some point. I thought I'll do a PhD. But talking to a lot of friends here, especially at Stanford, that did a PhD, I saw what is the chance that I'll do meaningful research that will have really an impact. Because really everyone did papers and a slight variation on this, slight variation on that. And what motivated me around entrepreneurship is that I have a higher chance of changing something, of having an impact on a certain amount of people. And the other thing that really back then motivated me was like, in a business, I'm not only needed for my coding skills, I can build a nice homepage, but I can really have impact throughout my technical skills, but also through my leadership skills. And so back then they were just friends, but turned out co-founders, we all had been in the US. And we understood we want to build a company. Everyone's doing this here. Why shouldn't we try? And I mean, we were about to graduate and needed to find out what will be life afterwards. And so we were looking for ideas we could do. And at the CDTM, that program, there's a course called MPD where students try out projects. And so Max and Anselm back then had a project for the price search engine Billiger.de. Oh, thank you. Price search engine Billiger.de. They was wondering, we're selling everything real well, just not fashion. Why don't you guys figure out how to do that best? And so they created the fashion channel as a student project. And we thought, we have the business plan, still sounds like a good idea. Why don't we start this as a company? And this is how we got started. This is in Berkeley, after Beta Breakers, where this was our costume. We started coding. And it started by this. It was a visual search engine. My part was a lot around the visual aspect. We wanted to search by similarity and color. We thought this to be highly technical. In the end, turns out that was not what people wanted. But this was the nucleus. This is where we started. And so we brought Stylight from a company that was started in 2009 with 4 people to a company with 250 people by the end of 2016, live in 18 countries. And we sold the company to ProSieben. This is us at the Notary Public. This is our moment. This was a great success and enabled me to do so much more in life. For example, I just want to give you inspiration, travel to the end of the world. And even there's a sign here in Antarctica where Munich is. So we know we're a good place to be. And also I learned that it's important not only to build your company, but to help other people where you get inspiration. And for example, this is the workshop where we brainstormed with Personio, where we happen to be one of the first investors, to build their strategy. And you see it says to be the leading HR software for medium-sized companies in Europe, in Germany or Europe, we were unsure back then, by 2020. So I think that really worked well. And you see, if you set yourself goals, and the goals can be on just a simple post-it, it can turn out to be large. And so my journey continued also helping in Lovinovo's founding. Back to the final moment, this is again Anselm and me writing the first lines of Alasco. And I built Alasco around the feeling that we as a generation, we the young people, while I'm still young, we know about digitalization. And that's a gift. And we experience life and we feel and we breathe digitalization. And so it's a duty that we give this knowledge and make this knowledge accessible to the whole society. And this is what I'm really able to do with Alasco, where our mission it is to bring the real estate industry, the largest asset class in the world, it's 10% GDP worldwide, bring this up to par with leading industries in terms of digitalization. Because it turns out they're not up to par, they're rather in the lower end of digitalization. And so Alasco, we founded it 3.5 years ago because I helped to build a friend who had a problem. I built him a software solution. It was for invoice approval. So invoices come in a folder and people have to sign it off on paper. And this just doesn't work in today's world where he's in his office 1 day per week. So I built him a simple solution. We tried it and they used it to approve invoices more than 10 million euros within a few weeks. It's like, maybe here's something. Now I'll get back to this. Today, Alasco is 130 people. We're already active in the UK. We've extended our product to ESG. And what we really do is we help owners of real estate projects that are being built or being maintained and managed to manage them more efficiently in a digital way and to harness the benefits of digitalization. And you see, we again have this chart. As of now, 1,700 buildings are being run and maintained through Alasco. Some of them here around in the Werksviertel are being built with that. And that gives me a lot of joy. That's for me a personal motivation for us engineers that often work on software and code to actually see and feel and be able to touch our results is something special, and that motivates me. And so from that journey, so you now know what I did, what are my learnings? And the first one is, it's team over idea. A lot of people have great ideas, but what my personal learning was very often, it's not the idea that you started with that you end up with. Like we with Stylight, not so much a visual search by the end. So because of that, it's so much more important from my perspective that you have the right team, which goes with you through all these pivots and changes. And from another perspective, you're spending most of your wake time with these people. It's stronger than marriage. You're spending more time with your co-founders than you will spend with your partner at home. So choose those people wisely, and you need to trust them. And I've, in our company, he might actually be alum, Felix Kraut, he was with us at Alasco for 1 year. He founded Cento. They just announced their funding today. And I always told him, he was wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I told him, only go if you have the right team, then go. But wait until you have the team that you want to spend the next 10 years with. The second is also around team. I think it's important to have diversity. And by diversity, I mean diversity in different categories. This is partly about gender, but this is also about skills, about characters. Because what makes you strong, from my perspective, to get a company out of the ground, that you have all these skills and characters and persons with you that you don't need anything else. Basically, that you're self-contained and that you can deliver on what you want to do. And you don't need to rely on external support. And once a company grows, I think it's important to have these different angles to look at certain things. It helps so much to have someone who's more the executor, then someone who's a strategist, then someone who's more a people person, and then someone who's just looks at things very rationally. So you want to have all these perspectives, and this makes together a great team. And so I take it's way better than having 3 people which are mini-me's, which are like me. We studied all the same, we have the same background, we have the same gender, we have the same ideas. You want to have diversity, from my perspective. The next thing I learned, go where there's a large market. It makes stuff so much easier. One of the other companies after Stylight X that we started to found was a dating app. And it turned out the overall market or the overall monetization of Tinder at that time was 100 million euros. And basically at that time, Tinder was the market. And this is really hard to build then a competitor to something where the market is only 100 million. So as the larger the market, it's the easier to build a successful company, and it's something you can't change afterward. So this is why, if I'm looking now at businesses, and this was one of the reasons which Alasco and the problem, and then we decided to actually scale it and really make a company of it, appealed to me because the real estate market is 10% of GDP worldwide. It's by far the largest asset class. And here's something where I value people paying for something over having a great idea. And this was one of the sort of on the requirements list before I said I'll commit, once we had sold Stylight, once I'll commit to a new venture. I wanted to have something where people really pay for it. Because this shows me they don't only use my product because they like me or want to do me a favor, but we're really solving a customer pain. So I always looked for people are willing to put down their money and pay for something rather than say, it's a great idea, I would try this. I'm hoping for you they would try, but if they pay, they're trying. And then there's one last thing. There's many different ways how to finance a company. For me, personally, I like the concept of having VCs at the stage where I am young, where I have a high appetite for risks. VCs are, for me, the best solution. Why is that? Why do I value them more than the 3 Fs, the friends, fools, and family? Because I think if we're young, the greatest asset is our time, or basically whenever you have, the greatest asset is time. And when you're young, you have can take a higher risk because if it doesn't work out, you can find a job somewhere else and do something that's less risky. And what I like is that VC money for right now at a really cheap, I was going to say fair, but cheap price allows us to build companies with a high risk. This is the one thing where I really like it. And I think it's better to put your family's money on ETFs or any other product because you don't, as a family, you don't have the portfolio effect, but the VCs do. So that's the one reason I think about it. The second thing is it holds me accountable. If I'm raising money from someone who I don't have a relationship like to my mom, I can always say, Mom, I thought about different, please, do I have to pay it back, sort of? But the VCs keep me accountable, and that's one of the goals I have in life, that I'm being held accountable, and that this allows me to grow. So this was my learning about starting a company, and now I have two things that I'd like to share with you, as I assume many of you have an engineering background that I learned over time, which are special to engineers, and I'd like to give a shout out and motivate you to think about 2 aspects. The first one is delegation. Delegation is to build something that's larger than yourself. It's so important that you delegate rather than do it yourself. And I give you a story. So this is me graduating from my high school in Puchheim. And I was in charge of the, we call it as in German, it's the Abiturstreich, I guess the high levels prank, whatever the translation. And so what we wanted to do is, we locked down the school, built a stage, had a show, had all these things. So I was in charge of planning, and I did a detailed list on what should be done where. But I never, and then we met at the night before in the gymnastics arena hall, and I was handing out the list. But I hadn't prepared to delegate. I only made thoughts of me, what would I need to do to all do this done? But it was not possible at all that I do it, all myself. So it needed to be delegated. But I was really bad at delegation because I haven't even thought about delegation. And this is what it is like to build a great company in a short period of time. You need to distribute the work not just to yourself, but to all of your employees. And this requires you to delegate. Else, you're staying up long, you're overworking yourself, and the company never gets there where it is. So think about delegation and actually do it. It often feels hard because you can't control for the outcome, but that's the real art, is empowering people to give them your thoughts or where it should go, and empowering that they do the work that you wanted to do. And the truth is, most of the time, they do it way better than you. And the second thing is, I'd like to share is, we engineers, especially software engineers, we don't put a price tag on our time. People in business know this, it's called opportunity cost. But we as engineers feel it, I can do this myself. So basically we assume from I can do it myself, I should do it myself. So a favorite example of mine is, how many friends of mine run their own email server? Yes, I can put up a box somewhere on Amazon, I can configure, I can have a mail server, I can do all this. But it takes me 3 hours to get it done, and then it takes another maintenance hour per month or whatever. And so we do it because we think our time is not worth. But think of what you could do in that time and just pay someone, €5 per month. So for us engineers, there's a huge temptation, just because we can do it, that we do it. And I'd like to encourage you to think about what you best want to do with your time. And maybe it's just watching a movie. But I think you have a great benefit of that. Sometimes I agree, you have to geek out and you have to do it. But have this concept in mind. And that's what I wanted to share. If you have any questions, if I can be of any help for you, do send me an email. It's easy, firstname.lastname@gmail. I don't host my own email server, it's Gmail. We are hiring at Alasco, go to Rohde Schwarz, whatever is your appetite. I think you should try out, apply with different companies, and figure out who you want to be and what serves us well. Thank you. Thank you.
Also, thank you, Sebastian, for your presentation. I really enjoyed it. I feel that you have a lot of passion speaking about your experience, about sharing your lessons learned. Again, are there any questions from the audience at home? Feel free to share whatever comes up to your mind. I think also feedback is welcome.
Yeah. Give me if it was too long. That comes from the regie. But if you want to trigger me to tell stories, ask questions.
Yeah, I prepared some questions. So I'm really impressed. You worked in 4 startups, what I understood so far. What would you say were your biggest challenges during this time?
I think with any growing organization, to me personally, the biggest challenge is personal growth. Because to me, the limit of the organization is the ceiling is how capable we are as leaders. And it's just hard to accept that, no, I'm not doing this myself. Or, maybe I need to hold people accountable or tell them this is not a good job. And then they start, they have tears in their eyes. That's not something I'll enjoy, but at the end, the organization needs it. And so I think understanding that and trying to overcome it were the biggest challenges I had personally.
What helped you to overcome?
For me, 2 things. One is to have peers to talk with and, how did you do it? And the other is having a psychologist to discover why do I react like that and why is that and do I actually want to react like that? So get coaching.
Yeah.
It's very valuable to me.
Nice. Can understand that. That's really helpful. When you were standing here, your body language shows that you were super passionate about the thing. What drives you? What's the thing that's always pushing you far?
If I knew that, I'd be in an easy life. I'm always still thinking of it. But I think it's people. It's helping people. And sharing, I feel really, as I said at the beginning, I feel duty bound because who am I and what the stuff I got by birth, sort of, that I share this with other people because apparently I'm quite good at certain things, and I think that gives a duty to share or to help or to support or make this accessible.
Yeah, develop.
Yeah.
Nice, great. Okay, there are coming questions and feedback from the audience
feedback.
at home.
Feedback. That is going to be good.
I think it's good to hear, great talk and really inspirational. So. Nice one. And what do we have here? How do you think the venture capital market will change within the next 2 years? I am in a good job for a year and I want to gain more experience, but feel that I'm missing out. That I'm missing out on a great time to found a company. I don't have the team yet, but wasn't pushing to find one either.
So we had the discussion earlier today. So people at the stock market in general getting a little bit worried what's happening and what's the valuation of tech stocks. But what we are seeing, or the current opinion is twofold. We'll still see the same climate for founding new companies. The valuations are being the same because people think, I invest now and in 3 years or 2 years when they need their next round, the economy is great again, so we don't worry about it. So this is one thing we're seeing. And the other thing is what we're seeing is that large, very successful companies continue to be funded. Just in the middle market, we feel there will be a problem. And the other thing you have to understand, all these funds, they collected so much money over the last 2 or 3 years where you basically got no interest nowhere. And they were saying, we're giving you 15%. So everyone put money in there. And so they committed their capital. And now these funds have to deploy the capital. So I think we'll have a good funding climate for very young and very successful companies in the beginning. So if you're thinking to start, it should be still good for the next 1 or 2 years. And I don't know further.
Question related to this, how to find co-funders?
Sure. I was lucky to go to be at the place where I met them, but I think it makes sense to. I mean, there's by now so many opportunities where people go and I'm interested in entrepreneurship, and I think what I would do if I'd be, now looking, I would see what talents am I missing in sort of my virtual team, and then go maybe to that university. Maybe they have an entrepreneurship, whatever. Maybe you can audit the lecture and just join a team there. So I think it's very much about diversity and going somewhere where you're not normally be. That helped me.
Thank you. I hope this helps.
Else write me an email, then sort it out later.
Yeah. Then in between, one feedback. Nice talk, Basti, from Eva. CDTM 2010. And then, so far, the last question in the chat. What is your most important advice you have for first-time founders or for future tech founders?
I think you're not alone in this. There's other people that have gone through the same struggles, and there's other people that are struggling with the same things right now. So go and find your peers and talk to them. It can be so relieving just to, that there's 3 people in a room all complaining how shitty the situation right is, but it relieves you. And someone always has an idea. And there are so few situations where you're actually competitive, right? I mean, there's so many people doing so many different things. There's always someone to talk to. That's what would be the advice. And don't sacrifice your psychological safety and health for the company. You will stress it very often, but make sure you don't go across a red line. Not worth it.
Thank you. In between, we got one more quite long question. I will go through it. Thank you very much for this interesting and inspiring talk. Personally, it was eye-opening to me how important delegation is. You said that you decided against doing a PhD to directly found your own company. Do you think that it is a decision for either PhD or entrepreneurship, or is it later also possible after a PhD? Is it too late at some point to become an entrepreneur? Best, Reinhard Wiesmeyer.
No, I think, to me, I would rather think of like, when do I have the team and potentially even the idea? And that can come from a PhD. So I think if you have the opportunity to do a PhD and you're interested in it right now, go for it. Just keep your eyes open when there might be an option. And no one said you need to complete a PhD. Or in our case, we started Stylight half a year before we graduated. We got so much more efficient and my grades got better. Basically spent no time at university, only looked what does it need to get this exam done. So I think it can also be the final push in your PhD to actually, write it up. So I would say no certain advice to do whatever thing seems right at that situation. You can always be an entrepreneur. And I think what's also important, entrepreneurship does not mean you found a company. It's a way of thinking and working. Why don't change the way research is done? Maybe we're trying to do these things better, figure out how to do agile research, change something there. You can be an entrepreneur at the university too. You don't have to found a company for that. And I think just the only feeling I have it, the older you get, well, I'm 37 now, but the older I'm getting, I guess the less risk-taking people are. So it's maybe harder to found a company. I think there's a point if you're 50 again, you're like, whatever. It's more likely again. But if you start to have kids, you need to pay for a mortgage. It just takes more. I'm absolutely admire people that take that step. I don't know if I would do it. So that's only, I think there's a dip in your risk awareness if you have kids and whatever.
One question relating to the risk topic. But first, nice talk, thank you. How to manage the risk of debt? I would like to open a startup someday, but I'm afraid to getting into debt because of it.
That is really the nice thing I like about venture capital. Because with venture capital, basically there is someone that says, hey, I take 10% of your business, and for that I give you X amount of money. And there's no strings attached. So if the company failed, you don't have any debt. You don't have a job too, but by now it's easy then to get a job if you had, startup experience. But so this is really why I think it's right now a great climate if you want to be an entrepreneur. You can do this with basically minimum personal risk. Your personal risk is you have to face the fear of failing, and you maybe have spent well, I don't know what the word is. You have wasted, that's a word. You feel you have wasted 2 years of your life. But actually, I think you haven't wasted it. You got the best education. I always joked, we had the MBA paid by VCs, learning about how to run a business. And a startup transforms yourself as a person so much that I think that looking back 20 years after, you say this was the most transformative time, and you don't look back as a failure, but as an opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you also for the answers from the audience as one reply. But we have one more question. And I think it will be, we take it as the last one. I think you will be open to reach out further questions via email, and you can reach out to Sebastian at any time. So from Professor Eversbecher, could you comment on the advantages of larger companies with respect to their capabilities to make big investments, e.g. for laboratories? Examples are car companies or, of course, Rohde Schwarz.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we're thinking about research, I think to everyone's minds comes the Bell Labs that have been the founding source for so many things. And I think that's also something we don't appreciate as much as large companies doing not only applied research, but basic general research that we all need as a society. So I think that's something where we're not very good as startups to support that kind of thing, that not just helps us in 2 years' time, but maybe 10, 20. So I think that's something we all should be thankful and support, is that we have companies that invest in the long-term future and not only leave it to the universities. universities are doing a great job, but I think it helps also to have the company entrepreneurial spirit in that. So I wish, maybe that's something for the future, but not, Alasco is too small right now for that, but eventually we'll get it there.
Thank you very much. So with this question, I would say we close today's Q&A session. You offered to reach out to you, and I think the same is applicable for Irman. Whenever you have questions, feel free to reach out. Before we officially close and I hand over again to Mr. Khadjavi, I also want to say thank you to everybody here on stage for your presentations, for the exciting insights, and again also for Mr. Khadjavi, Ms. Kunz, who organized today, and also to the colleagues of our video team here. So many thanks, and official closing from Mr. Khadjavi.
So also from my part, a big thank you to everyone, the two speakers. I think what we heard were two optimists. I think it's very important to be optimistic when you start something, and these are definitely two very good examples for people who are very optimistic. And so thank you everyone. Have a good evening, and we'll see you back next year, hopefully in person with food, drinks, and lots of fun. Goodbye.